Some dare call it conspiracy.
And welcome to Hashtag Conspiracy, also known as some dare call it a spare to the air. I am Brent Lee.
And I'm Neil Sanders.
And I'm David Gilbert.
David, thank you so much for joining us, mate. Could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm a senior reporter for Vice News, and I've been covering conspiracy theories and extremists and the far right and all those fun topics for 4 or 5 years now. And I write about it on Vice.com.
Awesome.
And it's excellent stuff. And you, to be honest, you're kind of a perfect fit for us, really, because all of that sort of stuff is everything that we're interested in. Like all the resurgence of the far right, the culture war, all of this sort of stuff, and how conspiracy theories have basically been used to manipulate people in a way that people potentially don't see. Like this is one of the things that we sort of try and talk about. Like there are conspiracies out there, and people who listen to conspiracies and are into conspiracies are generally good people. Like they're people who are trying to sort of make the world a better place. And if you can sort of get in there and feed conspiracies to people, you can direct them into all sorts of nasty places, basically. So just to start off, how did you get into journalism? I'm sorry, I've stalked your LinkedIn. So, tell us about the time at the Wexford Echo. I think that's what everybody wants to hear.
I was hoping you were going to ask about the Wexford Echo. That's how I got into journalism. I had done an English degree in college, and I was kind of toying with the idea of becoming a teacher, but I did 6 months kind of just subbing to try it out, and that absolutely confirmed for me that I was never going to be a teacher and that it was not something I wanted to do. So I did a journalism diploma, and through that there's a kind of a on-the-job training course for a higher diploma in journalism with a local news group here in Ireland. So I did that, and through them I got a job with the Wexford Echo, which is a local newspaper in Ireland, in the southeast of Ireland. Got a really good experience there working in courts, but nothing to do with conspiracies. And after a while, I was there for 3 or 4 years. I just kind of wanted something different. So I moved to the UK. And the only job I could really get there was working on a technology site. So I was covering technology for years. And that kind of was the beginning of my interest in conspiracy theories and how the internet is kind of targeting people and attacking people. And I started off moving from working on technology, smartphones, laptops, stuff like that, to looking at social media companies. And that was one of my main areas of coverage on a website called the International Business Times, and where I was the tech editor, but I just didn't want to do regular tech coverage. So I started covering hacktivists like Anonymous, for example. Like I started covering Bitcoin really early on. We started covering disinformation. And that's where I suppose my real kind of interest in conspiracy theories began, because I was able to see, while I was reporting on the platforms as such, I was really looking at the types of disinformation that was being spread on those platforms, who was spreading them, how easy it was, and the impact that it was having on people.
Sorry, David, what year was this?
This was around, that's a good point. So I moved to the UK in 2010, and I started covering the platforms, I suppose, 2012, 2013, something like that, and really getting into that disinformation stuff around 2015. So
Okay.
then, that's really kind of ahead of the 2016 election, that's really where it kind of ramped up and really kicked off.
Like around the Gamergate sort of era.
Exactly. Gamergate was a big thing there. And funnily enough now, Fred Brennan, who kind of set up 8chan at the time, I'd consider him a close friend or acquaintance. At least I speak to him quite a lot about this kind of stuff and different figures that he has worked with over the years, Jim and Ron Watkins, etc.
Oh, we were going to ask you about them.
Yeah. So, I suppose, I moved to Vice I've been with Vice now, this will be 7 years this year. Jesus, is it? Yeah, 2016, I moved to Vice, and I started a much more US-focused, kind of, my coverage was initially global, but became much more US focused, and I focused very much on Facebook initially, kind of looking at the damage that they were doing around the world with their platform and how they were basically abdicating any responsibility, and claiming they were doing better, which they never did. And I think ultimately Facebook is kind of paying the price now for its failure to really clean up its site, and it's failing ultimately and losing younger generations of users because it just didn't handle itself properly in terms of dealing with disinformation, dealing with bad actors on the platform. And then I suppose around 2018, early 2018, I suppose QAnon came across my radar. I didn't really start reporting on it. I was just kind of monitoring it. And later that year, I kind of started reporting on it. And I've been kind of reporting on QAnon full time, or it's been one of my main beats for a long time. And that then kind of morphed into, we have a really good team of kind of extremist reporters at Vice News. And there's a group of us, and we kind of all, a lot of it overlap between kind of extremists, neo-Nazis, Proud Boys, stuff like that, but also QAnon, sovereign citizens, kind of the full gamut of kind of conspiracy theories and extremists. And yeah, I've been in that world for the last 4 or 5 years, pretty much full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be like an increasing sort of cross-contamination, you could say, between sort of the right and far-right figures and conspiracy theories. I mean, I suppose if you really wanted to sort of go into it, there's always been a historical connection all the way back to sort of, Jewish world conspiracies, the Rothschilds, etc., etc. These are, all founded in well, essentially Nazis, aren't they? But going back to when you were sort of initially getting into sort of the disinformation and stuff like that, what was the sort of the first stuff? I'm assuming that it might be, because of the timescale, stuff to do with the election of Trump, potentially even sort of Cambridge Analytica stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think the one thing, because when I joined Vice first, I was looking more globally than US focused, and it was the situation in Myanmar where the ruling junta there used Facebook to direct, incite violence against the in Rakhine State and against Rohingya, and it was that really kind of opened my eyes to how Facebook could be weaponized as a platform and it was a very direct line, and the UN report very clearly laid out that Facebook facilitated this genocide, ultimately after years of Facebook denial. And the same thing happened in Ethiopia, in Sri Lanka. It's happened in India since. It's, it was kind of more global, and ultimately it came to the US with the Cambridge Analytica stuff and with the 2016 election. But I think it was the kind of global stuff and how it was not only, causing disinformation to be spread, but also actually causing real life violence and harm to minorities, that really opened my eyes to what the power of Facebook was and how badly it was being run.
So just in regards to the Myanmar incident, where did that disinformation come from?
It came from the ruling government, right, and it was spread through kind of these high profile monks and generals and people who were what's the word? I suppose who are sympathetic to the government, and they wanted to basically reclaim Rakhine State from the Rohingya.
Yeah.
And they were then able to basically spread false information about claiming that the Rohingya had done this and had done that, committed these atrocities where in fact nothing of the kind had happened. And the result is hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives. Millions of people were displaced and are still displaced. And it was the primary vector for that was Facebook. It's been proven over and over again. And like Facebook ultimately sort of apologized, and said they wouldn't let this happen again. But it's not only has it happened in other countries again, it's happened in Myanmar again. So it's just terrifying how little these companies seem to care about the actual impact they're having on people's lives.
But just as, and this is to our listeners as well, because some of us accuse us of basically denying that any conspiracies exist, which is not the point of the show at all. But there is a perfect example of why we're doing this show, right? Okay, there's an actual conspiracy with conspirators, with an action, with a mechanism, and with results that ended up in many dead. Okay, that is a real conspiracy. People have conspired to manipulate others in order to kill people and gain something for an agenda. And whilst people are mucking about with Pizzagate and QAnon and COVID denial and viruses don't exist and anti-vax rubbish, it's stuff like this, real world stuff where actual harm happens that just goes under the radar. And so this is why it is massively important to do, to make the distinction between disinformation, between real conspiracies, and between utter bunk.
Absolutely. And it was the same thing with the 2016 election. Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that it was crazy to think that Facebook had influenced in any way the outcome of the 2016 election. And this was before the Cambridge Analytica stuff came out. And then he had to walk it back by saying, oh, well, yeah, okay, actually, Facebook was used to try and influence the election. So, he was trying to claim that this is all some sort of conspiracy.
Well, it kind of was, but not in the way that he was explaining.
Yeah, exactly. So you're absolutely right that, you can show people proof of conspiracies that are actually conspiracies that actually happened. Whereas, as you say, you have people kind of going around trying to make something up out of thin air instead.
Yeah. It is a bizarre thing that we come up against more and more, to be quite honest. But yeah, what can you do about it? So, as you said before, you've covered a huge amount of different topics, like all the sort of the conspiracy theories du jour and stuff. Let's just dive in with it. So QAnon, how did that sort of come across your radar?
Probably Twitter, I guess, was probably how it first came about because, right, that's where I usually first see all this kind of stuff. And there was people covering it before me, and they, but it was very, very low level. It was bubbling under the radar. When I remember first mentioning it to my editors, they just kind of dismissed it as nothing. And people still dismiss it as kind of nothing. But yeah, it was in 2018, it was just kind of, it was very hard to get your head around because at that point it hadn't kind of broken out of the 4chan, 8chan bubble that it kind of had begun in. It was on Reddit a little bit, then it got banned from Reddit, and it hadn't kind of leaked onto the mainstream. So to try and make people understand what you were talking about was very difficult because obviously the Q drops that it's based on are so dense and kind of involved, and you have to understand.
Dense in both sense of the word.
Yes. And, you have to be so kind of read up on what it means that, I couldn't pitch in the morning going, oh, there was a new Q drop, it said this. My editor was just like, so? What?
Yeah.
Some guys on the internet don't, and it's, so yeah, and it wasn't really taken kind of seriously until it kind of became clear that there was a following here and that people were taking this seriously. But the first, I still remember the first pieces I wrote was very condescending and very dismissive and very, oh, look at these crazy Trump guys who are thinking, and
yeah,
it was how my editors said that I could write about it because they felt that's the only way to approach it because it is so outlandish.
However, I'm assuming from what you've said there that your sort of opinion on it changed. Not that you thought of hang on, there's something to this. But your opinion changed in as much as basically this isn't just silly. This has got potential to cause real world harm. There's a huge amount of people who, for some reason, are on board with this. Are we on the right track there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of, I suppose 2019 was the year where it kind of broke out, and there were some people who, there was kind of public displays of people who had committed acts of violence who were doing it in the name of Q.
Yeah.
And that kind of made people kind of sit up and go, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. And the number of people who were following it on the groups online were growing. There was growing number of influencers within the community who had kind of, staked out their own claim within the group. So there was very much an ecosystem building around it. And it was kind of, I suppose, then 2020 with the lockdown, when it kind of really just exploded onto the mainstream. It had already moved onto Facebook and Twitter at that point, but with the lockdown, it was where people just became absolutely obsessed with it. People had time to read it. It got kind of rebranded as something much less, there wasn't the dense Q drop language used. It was very much as kind of, as one researcher called it, pastel QAnon, where it was kind of rebranded for the Instagram and Facebook generation, where it was presented basically as, oh, this is just about saving children. Who doesn't want to save children?
Yeah.
So that's what everyone joined in. And it kind of very, very quickly went from relatively big to absolutely huge, where millions and millions and millions of people were following it. And not just regular people, but prominent lawmakers were boosting it. And it kind of, it kind of took on a life of its own. And I suppose because I was reporting on it every week, I didn't see how quickly it had kind of grown. And so you kind of had to step back and go, oh, wow, this is actually, it's impacting people's lives. People are dying because of it. People are losing. And I think it was only when I wrote a story in early 2020 when I spoke to like 24 family members of QAnon believers. And they told me their stories about losing, like basically every one of them said that they felt there's a death in the family. They had lost someone. They no longer talked to them. They no longer had any interaction. People, like, it was really, really sad listening to those stories. And I think that's when I realized what impact that QAnon was having on people.
Yeah. I mean, Alex Jones started promoting it and pretending that he knew who Q was and stuff like that, didn't he? And like, the interesting thing that I always sort of thought about Q was it was politics for people that like wrestling, by which I mean, basically, like, there's nothing political about Q. It's a mystery. It's reptilian paedophiles under the White House and saving children from tunnels before they're shipped off to Epstein's Island. It's proper Pulp Fiction stuff. But ultimately, what it gets you to do is vote for Donald Trump. Like, that's the savior in Q. It's directing people who have got no interest in politics and probably wouldn't have voted before. Now they're going to vote for somebody because they're saving children. And to my mind, I always was curious as to sort of I always thought that was the point. I thought it must have been to do with Donald Trump and been promoted and started by someone very close to the Trump administration. Purely because, and I may have got this wrong, but wasn't it originally involved with the first impeachment? Wasn't that where it came about? Or did it start prior to that? Because I know that they thought that the Mueller investigation was going to basically end in Hillary being executed.
Yeah, no, it started before that. It was late 2017 when the first Q drops came about. So it was kind of prior to that, but it very quickly, it latched on to, and this is, because it moved from 4chan late 2017 into early 2018, and then it moved to 8chan because there was some issues with moderation, and the person behind it wasn't happy. And then when it moved to 8chan in early 2018, according to my understanding, the account got taken over by the people running 8chan, which at the time was Ron and Jim Watkins. They took over the account from someone else, and they basically ran it then because they saw that people were coming to 8chan for QAnon. To visit Q Research Board, that was the biggest traffic driver on 8chan. There was no other reason, because Gamergate had kind of fizzled out. So they were now looking for something else to get people to come to the site. And my thinking is that they saw that this was a hit with people who were Trump fans, and they leaned into that. And therefore, from then on, all the Q drops were kind of written to appease or to appeal to people who were following Donald Trump.
Okay, so you're saying that essentially Q at that point was playing to the audience, giving the audience what it wanted, as opposed to potentially sort of directing them to Trump.
I think at that point it had switched, that they realized that this is who their audience was. This is where they were going to, get a sizable return on kind of whatever input they were having.
Yeah.
And so they played up the fact that Trump was their savior, was the person who was fighting the deep state.
But ultimately, it's going to be a financial decision rather than a political decision. They've not done it because they wish to promote Donald Trump. You think that basically it was done because that was most profit?
Yeah, that's my opinion. There's varying opinions on who is behind Q and who, it's pretty clear that there was definitely two authors. There's, stylometric analysis has been done, and it's pretty clear that there was 2017, early 2018 drops, and then there was from then on. And that ties up with the account from the person who ran the Calm Before the Storm board on 8chan, who said his account was taken away from him. So the timeline lines up, and I think that Jim and Ron Watkins just saw it as a financial opportunity. That was the reason why people were coming to 8chan. Let's give them more of what they want.
I think this brings me perfectly to the question I wanted to ask you. Is Q's identity important to find out?
No. Colin Hobach's documentary, for me, pretty much said, it pretty much revealed, when I watched it, I was kind of convinced, it's Ron. He's nodding and winking at this stuff. He's, it's pretty obvious. And like Jim Watkins' ham-fisted attempts to reignite Q in the last year, when he tried to, pretend that Q was back and it was posting again, but he got all the technical stuff wrong, and he just completely and utterly botched it. That just again shows me that they are involved. They've got the passwords. But ultimately, it doesn't matter at this point, because it's now, Q's now gone. Q is in the ether. Q was this kind of, the Q drops, the 4,953 of them or whatever that are there, are canon. That's what people will look at from now on.
Even the bits that contradict each other.
You're clearly not looking at them closely enough, Neil.
Yeah.
You just need to do a bit more research.
No, but that's you're dead right, haven't you? Because the point is that basically, if you've decided that you believe in QAnon, essentially you can dismiss or believe anything that you want, because anything that doesn't sort of sit with you, you can say, well, that's evidently somebody pretending to be Q for misinformation. Or if, I've seen people react to that particular documentary and seen the Watkins chap, basically, I forget exactly what he says, but it's something along the lines of course I'm not Q, wink, 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 or something like. It's really sort of like, he gives a proper stage.
He just smiles into the camera. It's like, he so wants the recognition, but knows he can't, because
it'll ruin it.
Exactly. It will completely ruin it and completely undermine his authority on anything. And like, he built a amazingly successful career for himself as a cybersecurity expert on election machines within days of, he quit 8chan, and suddenly he was a cybersecurity expert on the Dominion machines. And he's a huge part of the reason that big lie took hold initially, because Trump retweeted him. He was the one who was kind of cited in affidavits by Sidney Powell. He was a central player in that whole election denialism conspiracy world, which is, that has kind of, Q has very quickly morphed, or a lot of Q kind of fed into that. And it's incredible how he has played a central role in that. And then, of course, he tried to parlay that into like real world power by running for Congress, which didn't end very well. And now he's running some sort of random 8chan AI generator, which terrifies me.
Oh, good. That's just what we want. AI run by people on 8chan.
No, it's been trained on images that were posted on and content from 8chan.
Well, there'll be plenty of laws. At least we can look forward to that.
Yeah.
But no, absolutely. It's fascinating. Like, as you say, I know people that are convinced that General Michael Flynn or General McChrystal, very high up military people are Q. or at the very least connected to Q. And it is a fascinating thing. But as you say,
You're not talking about Jim Stewartson, are you, by any chance?
no,
No.
Because he's convinced that Michael Flynn is Q, or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, there are loads of people who believe that Trump is Q. There are loads of people who there's various different people over the years who have been Q, but like all the evidence points to not being someone of any authority whatsoever.
Yeah, personally, my thoughts on it are I'm very much in line with the consensus of how it's two different Qs. The first Q is possibly one person, and then the second Q is most likely the Watkins. Which, if it is the Watkins who are the second Q, I think that kind of squashes any idea that the first Q was anybody powerful. It couldn't then really be a Mike Flynn or a Russian propaganda or a government psyop because, well, these two weirdos wouldn't have been able to steal it off of people that were powerful like that, Do you know what I mean?
Fair point.
That's a very good point.
And, I don't think it'll change much if we knew for certain who these Qs were. It wouldn't change the conspiracies. It wouldn't fix the problem that we have already. But I just feel like it might help us understand. For the people who are trying to figure it out, figure out this mess that we're all in, I think it would be beneficial to have like the full context here.
It alleviates doubt, doesn't it?
But it eliminates doubt in a proportion of people's thinking. But some people, it will never, no facts, no evidence will ever be enough. And that's the same with QAnon. Like, I'm not sure, whether I don't think we're ever going to find out where COVID came from, to be honest, but I'm not sure how it would help. Like, in terms of, from the conspiracy point of view.
Well, it's not going to help from the conspiracy point of view. How it would help is because you sort of your mainstream or whatever has at least got a sort of grounding in saying, no, we know that is. I suppose though we kind of already have that with the documentary and stuff like that. But it is a tricky one. You're not going to change a lot of people's minds because, as you say, like it has become almost like a sort of religion to people now, isn't it? Basically, but it's just.
But it is, yeah, and they don't care. Lots of people who believe in QAnon conspiracies don't even know it's QAnon anyway. They'll just repeat the
slogans,
satanic pedophiles.
Yeah,
bunkers under the, like. There's a pastor in Tennessee, Greg Locke, who talks about that he's seen the bunker or the tunnels under the White House. He's got proof. We went and videoed with it. Got him on camera, and he was very open, very talking about this. He talks about it on his during his sermons, but he said he doesn't know about QAnon. He's no idea about that. He's not a QAnon supporter, but what he's saying is verbatim what QAnon has kind of claimed. So it's morphed way beyond kind of QAnon to an extent, and is now, like, a lot of it is become kind of Republican Party orthodoxy in the US, because it's parts of it, the kind of more palatable parts of it have been taken and kind of been used. Like, the fact that Democrats are pedophiles or demonic is kind of, accepted by large swathes of the US public now. And that's all come from QAnon. That's where it kind of, now obviously, as we said initially, this kind of global elite centuries, right? Goes right back. And I'm actually reading a book at the moment that it goes back to Roman times, and how this kind of stuff was even being shared back then. So this is millennia old. This isn't just decades or centuries old. This is, this goes right back to the beginning of time, effectively.
By which you mean sort of smearing of your political opponent, or just spreading like malicious, vicious, crazy rumours?
No, and anti-Semitic kind of blood libel.
Oh, the blood libel.
Yeah, and like eating children's blood or torturing children to drink their blood. That very specific thing goes way back to the Romans. It's amazing how it has just consistently been regurgitated throughout history. And QAnon is just the latest example of that. Like we had it with, as you said, with the Nazis. We had it with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion before that. Like it's just been around forever.
Well, the first time I heard about children being kept in cages in like tunnels was a very old lecture that I saw probably 20 years ago by a bloke called Commander X.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember Commander X?
Yeah, I do. I remember.
And I've got his book as well. I've got the Grand Deception, which is interesting. But in this, he actually shows photos. It's a woman in like a sort of, if I remember it, it's a blonde woman in like a sort of shiny like leotard type thing, and she's in a cage. And then he also flashes up a picture of a child in a cage, and there's nothing to back any of this up. But to be quite honest, I remember at the time being about 20 odd at the time, going, "Bloody hell, that's outrageous!" And as you say, it's not that it's a new thing at all. I think what's interesting as well is the sort of the shift to the Republicans as well. And I think personally, I might be wrong about that's Alex Jones. That's Alex Jones all the way, because Alex Jones always made a big point about being apolitical.
Yeah, totally.
Right up until about the time that he got divorced and he needed some money. And then all of a sudden he decided that the left wing was really bad and that the right wing was the way to go forward, because Trump was the savior, and he tied that in with QAnon and a lot of stuff. But as you also said, there has been a complete embrace of certain conspiracy theories, like the Great Replacement, like concepts of them wanting to take away guns, like suspicion of vaccines and medicine and government overreach and stuff like that is being parroted by, say, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Laura Boebert or Matt Gaetz, or to a lesser extent people like Jim Jordan. And then you've got Tucker Carlson, Fox News. They've got a nice line in that. And on this side of the pond, we've got GB News. And also you've got sort of magazines like Spectator and stuff like that. They're also sort of embracing this conspiratorial bent. What's your sort of opinion on that, David?
Yeah, it kind of really worries me how widespread and how quickly conspiracies are kind of infecting very mainstream discussion and debate in the media and, on television, online, obviously, and just in the real world. And it's even, even here in Ireland, lately we've had a little bit of the Great Replacement theory has cropped up with, there's been, because we have a housing crisis and because we've got a pretty open immigration policy in the country, there's been a lot of protests about that. And it's kind of just because, I don't know, it seems that people are much more willing to kind of instantly gravitate towards a conspiracy theory about something than, because that explains it very easily about, why don't I have a house and a car and 2 or 3 holidays a year like everyone else seems to have? They don't, but that's, is what's portrayed online. And the easiest way to explain it is not because, look, the economy is not very good. We've just gone through a recession. We've just gone through COVID. There's lots of different factors. The easiest way to explain it is, oh, look, do you see all those foreigners over there? They're coming here to replace you. And like for most people, it kind of maybe ends like that. But then for more people, they'll join a Telegram channel that brings you much deeper down the rabbit hole. And it's that very quick and very easy pipeline, I think, is what's feeding this kind of widespread adoption of conspiracy theories and conspiratorial thinking. And it's right from the top right to the bottom. And it's like, I see it with people I know here locally. I'd been reporting on conspiracies for years, and then COVID hit, and my friends are telling me how, the Jews are trying to take over the world, and Bill Gates are putting microchips. And it's really terrifying when you see it face to face rather than on Telegram or Twitter or whatever that I've been reporting on. So it's really worrying. I think it's really something that has to be monitored. I don't know if there's a solution, because if the people who are in charge are the ones who are spreading it, how do you stop that? I don't know if that's how you view it as well. It'd be interesting to hear whether you think it's kind of become much more prevalent or not.
Massively prevalent. Like, the thing is, people want answers, right? Okay, people want answers. There's two problems right nowadays. People want answers, and people want their opinion to matter, and it doesn't. Nobody's opinion matters, but you've got a forum where it makes it seem like it does matter. And also on the same forum, you can find the answer to any question. It might not be the right answer, but it'll be the answer that you want. And that's why it molds people. I'll give you two examples, right? Okay, with this immigration thing, I've seen people rabidly rallying, people on my timeline on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, people that previously I thought were relatively sensible, like properly rallying protests at hotels where refugees and asylum seekers are being kept. And they're doing it for two reasons, both of which are total nonsense. One, because of these made up stories of mass rapes by immigrants, schoolgirls being chased and raped. Every single one has turned out to be not true. Okay. It's just an excuse to sort of make you feel like you're attacking the right person and that you're righteous. And then the second, more ridiculous one is this concept, and you'd be astonished how well this has been taken up, that this is an invading army, that this is the UN army, that these are all men of a certain age, no women, there's no children.
Yeah. Men of fighting age.
Men of fighting age, exactly. Right, okay, here to replace us, like... And and it would be terrible. Like imagine if all those foreigners came and they'd replace our curry shops and kebab houses with their own food. It would be a nightmare. But yeah, and I'll tell you another thing, David. This is why I moved away from the alternative media, because over the last 5-10 years, there's been a complete uptake of far right rhetoric. Loads of anti-Zionist stuff, loads of just flat out anti-Jew stuff, lots of stuff questioning the validity of the Holocaust, a huge amount saying that Hitler was totally misunderstood, and that basically there's that stupid, factually inaccurate film like The Greatest Story Never Told, which tries to explain how it's all a con and Hitler was the good guy and it's all been changed. That was all embraced like that. The Great Replacement, the concept. You ever heard of the Kalergi program or whatever?
No.
Is this idea that this bloke called Kalergi, who's he wanted to turn Europe into a mishmash of brown people, essentially. It was a Jewish plot to basically make people multicultural, and it's connected with the EU, and that's why everybody hated the EU, because the EU is a Nazi superstate somehow that was started by Jews to make everyone multicultural. Yeah, I know there are certain holes in that, but let's just skip over that for the time being. The most embarrassing thing about it is that this bloke Kalergi, it was written by John Coleman in the Committee of 300. Kalergi was actually a white supremacist. His father and him, for the majority of his life, was a massive anti-Semite. He didn't think that black people were human beings. He felt that basically we should enslave Africa and use the Africans because they were half animal. We should use them as slaves to help Europe. And then they tie it in with this thing called the Kalergi-Kudenov Award, which is basically something to do with the EU. And people suggest that this is about turning the EU into a superstate, which is the first step towards tyranny. And the irony is that this organization, which they hold up as being desperate to cause the Great Replacement, has even on its website, it suggests that we put a wall around Europe to keep it white and Christian. So this is the nonsense about the things, that these conspiracy theories that have brought up these people and lauded them as wanting to create this sort of one world, multicultural tyranny or whatever you want to call it. It's actually said the complete opposite.
They're the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody bothers to check. Everyone just quotes you the John Coleman one. There's that other book that's floating around at the minute. It's the New World Order book, and it basically goes, there's a paragraph in it, and everybody says, oh, this is so right. And it says, gay marriage will be allowed. The state will basically own all jobs. Women won't be allowed to take to raise their children. All schooling and all religion and all this will be banned, etc., etc., etc. And people look at this and go, "That's so prophetic. That's absolutely prophetic." There's 11 things that it predicts in this thing. One of them's come true, which is gay marriage, which is not a bad thing. But people still spread this around, basically going like, oh my God, wow, it's written down. And it's like, it's not written down. Like, people don't check stuff. I've been arguing with someone on Twitter all day, basically, about saying that COVID vaccines cause prion disease and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. And he sent me all these papers, and I'm reading through them. And it's like, this isn't talking about the vaccine. This is talking about COVID. This is talking about the potential for COVID to cause neurological damage, not the vaccine. But people don't bother to read stuff. They just read the headlines and send it.
It's amazing for a group of people who are so eager to tell you to do your own research. Like, the minute you look at the stuff, it just, like, if you actually, I tend not to a lot of the time, because I find what a lot of them do is kind of the digital version of like the paper terrorism that sovereign citizens engage in, where they just flood you with documents. Like, if I go, oh, well, if I make the mistake of engaging when someone, sends me an email criticizing is probably a euphemism, but criticizing my work, and I engage them because, just sometimes you just can't take it. I crack and I go, okay, well, prove me wrong. Tell me. And then it's like this flood of stuff. And like, okay, you click on it. And as you said, like, you're almost guaranteed that the first thing you click on will be not related to what they're talking about, or just obviously factually inaccurate. And if you point it out, they'll just send you another dozen or 24 links to tell you why that's right. And it's very tiring. And
it's that old classic Gish Gallop, it kind of suits us, to be honest. Like, me and Neil, we were people who know these talking points because we've believed them. We used to push them, so we kind of know where the Gish Gallop is going.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, that does happen. Next you're going to bring up this, aren't you? Then you're going to say this, and then you're going to say this, and it's like, okay, we've already...
So you can preempt their upcoming arguments.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned sovereigns, fottles, freemen on the land. I saw a recent article that you'd done. Apparently some quite prominent sovereign citizen in America has been arrested, has he? Or?
Yeah, Mr. David Lester Strait, a American state national, not a citizen of the United States, an American state national. He's a colleague of mine is doing a much bigger piece on him, looking at the money he's making. He's charging people $150 to attend one of his seminars. Zoom access is also $150 apparently. So that's not much of a benefit. And the last one that he posted on his Facebook page, there was definitely over 100 people at it. So that's 15,000 for a single day's bullshit. Sorry for the language, but he just is raking in money. He's kind of, him and another guy, Bobby Lawrence, they're probably the two kind of preeminent sovereign citizen gurus in the US. Obviously, there's loads of little different sovereign citizen variations, but he's kind of got the biggest following. And he's been telling people that if you pay all this money, he will give you all these documents that basically say you're not an American citizen. You're either a citizen of Texas or you're a citizen of or you're an American state national,
Yeah.
and you get a passport, and on the passport it says "Do not detain." And he says if you follow all this, even if you get arrested for not having a license or not having license plates on your car, you won't be detained.
Yeah.
Well, he got arrested and he got detained.
Yeah.
And he got put in jail overnight. And then all his followers were like, I thought you were on a do not detain list. Why are you in jail? And he's been trying to kind of, explain it away since that, I was in jail, but I stayed there because I was training 6 inmates for 17 hours straight. And it's just like, these guys are just never ending. But yeah, like the sovereign citizen stuff is fascinating. That's got massively popular, especially over here in Ireland and in the UK in recent years. And it's, as you say, free man of the land, or the various different names. Another colleague of mine went to the constable training that they have in the UK. I can't think of the name they give them now. Anyway, you go there and you get a day's training, and you get a little badge and everything. And it's just like you're then an official constable. I don't know.
Commonly known as Dave, the bloke that runs those things. He recently embarrassed himself, like trying to arrest a policeman.
There's it's incredible. Again, it's all a grift. It's all trying to make money. Like these people are just, and I guess as well as, I don't know if you remember, there was the video of the guys up in Scotland. Do you remember this, where they tried to they were claiming some castle in Edinburgh or something?
Oh no, that one, yeah. The idiots that basically tried to they got into Edinburgh Castle and decided that they'd claim it back for Magna Carta or some bollocks. Like
they're like they were there, the security guard, like, no, this is ours. This is our land. And the security guard was like, okay,
this is mine now. Yeah, if you could all just leave my castle, thanks. That'd be lovely. I have a few interactions with fottles. Like, okay, one, I used to work for electricity company, and my ex actually worked in the billing department. Like, she'd call me over, come and look at these, and it's a regular thing. It's an absolute regular thing that they get the things where they sign on the bill not payable or set to the sender, or that the bill pays for itself and stuff like that. Like, and I've had loads of people say, "Oh no, it definitely works," and it's like, I can tell you now it doesn't, because I've watched the process on accounts, on dozens of accounts. I'll tell you exactly what happens. Your bill keeps rising, and they'll do two things. One, they'll kick your door off and they'll put a prepayment meter on, and yes, they can do that. And the second thing that they'll do, they just send it to a bailiff company, and they're insured against the loss. So all that happens, right, okay, is that basically they charge other customers more which claims the money back. Then they get it back from the insurance. So actually, the electricity companies love the fottles because it makes them loads of money. I have a friend who's a copper, right, okay, and I've had loads of people say that, are you under your oath, blah, 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 do you stand under, I do not consent, and all this, and like as if there's this magic combination of words, like a Jedi mind trick that can freeze them in their stance. Like, these are not the fottles you are looking for. Like, and I asked my copper mate, I says, what would you do if you did that? He says, I'd probably hit him in the knee with my truncheon. Yeah, good. No, fair enough. Like, yeah, absolutely. And the third instance, like, whether to name this bloke or not, no, I shan't name him, but he had taken this young, impressionable fellow under his wing. He was a very, very prominent, one of the sort of the big fottle people, wore a feather in his hat. People might know who I'm talking about. Anyway, I was interviewing him on a radio show many, many, many years ago, and he'd brought this bloke up who was on some very, very minor charge. It was something like not paying his council tax or driving without a license. It was something that basically wasn't really that big of a deal. And this guy had convinced him to do the straw man thing. I'm not a real person, blah, blah, blah. That's just my legal entity. I'm a completely different person. And he went into court and he said to the judge, I don't recognize that. I'm not a real person. And you know what happened? And this isn't a funny story. The judge went, oh, poor fucker, doesn't know he's a human being. Section him. 2 weeks later, he was dead because he had a massive bad reaction to the medication that they put him on. That's the freeman on the land's fault. That's 100% his fault. 100%, right? And like, I was disgusted by it, absolutely disgusted. And there was never that connection that you've caused a man to be dead through your idiocy.
You see, that's it. It is, and like people say, "Oh, this is these are just silly people doing these silly things." But I don't know if you guys remember, was it last year, 2 years ago, maybe, a guy in Donegal in the north of Ireland, Joe McCarran. He was a member of this kind of. First of all, he was a member of a right-wing political party, and he then became a member of this sovereign citizen group. Just a local group. They were kind of initially fighting for rent control and stuff like that, but it kind of morphed into this more conspiratorial thinking, which is what happens. There's kind of a funnel there. And he got involved in this group anyway, and he got COVID, and he was sent to hospital because he was having trouble breathing. And they came to his wife, and they convinced this group that he was involved in, and they convinced her that he was in danger, that they were killing him. They were going to kill him in hospital. And so they walked into the hospital. It was actually an Italian guy, Anthony Muradu, who has kind of a lot. He filmed the whole thing on his camera and posted it to his Telegram group. They walked into the hospital. He was in a room on his own. He was on a ventilator. He was obviously sick. They pulled the tubes out of his arms. Blood, you could see blood spattering everywhere. They got him out. He couldn't stand. He could barely dress himself. They put him in a wheelchair, and they walked through the hospital shouting and screaming at the nurses and the doctors. A doctor came over and was just spoke to the patient himself, said, "Look, you're much safer here. You shouldn't go with these men. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm a doctor. You should stay here."
Yeah.
And they just started shouting, and he goes, "No, I'll leave." And they filmed him. They put up another video later that day, him at home, sitting around a table, and they were all like, they put it up to try and show, look how
He's fine,
well
yeah.
he is, how healthy he is. Even in that video, you could see he could barely
He looked
breathe.
terrible, yeah.
Hours later, he had to be rushed back to hospital and put on a ventilator, and he died 3 or 4 days later.
Yeah, I remember it. I do remember it.
And that's on their hands, but the police investigation has gone nowhere. They've not charged him with anything, the Italian guy or anyone. And it's tragic because his wife is on her own now. She's kind of
She's trying to do the best for her husband, wasn't
by
she? Yeah.
people who she believed were doing, looking out for her husband. When all they were doing was trying to, do this PR stunt for kind of anti-vaxxers and sovereign citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure a similar thing happened in the UK, and someone who's on my timeline was involved in it. But yeah, I do remember that. Was Dolores Cahill involved with that episode? Yeah,
she was an advisor. No, she wasn't directly involved, but she actually rang his husband. His wife. Sorry, yeah. She rang the wife, and she convinced her as well on the phone to allow these men take Joe McCarran out of hospital. And she had been up to that group as kind of she had a weird title within the group. She was like some sort of religious title. It was really weird, but she had been up there kind of giving them advice and giving them speeches. And again, she's really dangerous as well, 'cause she's got connections all across Europe, and she's really trying to push herself as this kind of global anti-vax sovereign citizen. She did that constable training in the UK as well, so she's a constable. So be careful; she might arrest you.
Oh, yeah.
She's a fascinating character because she's, her background is in science.
Yeah.
And something happened and it just switched so quickly from being this respected scientist. She worked at the Max Planck Institute for a while, and she has a lot of patents, and just incredible how it happened.
It's very, very seductive. All of a sudden you've got an audience of people that tell you that you're a genius and that you've changed their life.
Yeah.
And that basically, thank you, you're like a light in the darkness, no one else dare say what you do. And it gasses you. And I've literally watched it over COVID. I mean, I'm sure it happened to Brent and I in small degrees, to the point where we start, loving our own shit and whatnot. But I've watched people, because during COVID, people want an answer, they want an explanation, they want a closed loop because basically, like, there's nothing worse than uncertainty. This is why conspiracies appeal to somebody because, like, why did my dad die? Well, because that's the way that the universe works somehow. It's just a tragedy. Like, suck it up. That is hard to deal with. Why did my dad die? Oh, because somebody killed him. I know that sounds worse, but at least you've got some sort of explanation and closure rather than the universe just has got it in for me.
And you've got somewhere to put your anger. You can direct it at someone. You can't just direct it at the fucking universe because that's not going to help you. But if you can direct it at Pfizer or the government or a doctor or something, it's much easier for you to just cope with in the instant, at least in the short term.
Totally. And then from the other aspect of it, basically, if you change, and I've watched this happen, I could name names, but I won't, that they started embracing more anti-vax stuff, more COVID denial stuff about the test not working, stuff about viruses themselves perhaps not existing. And their audience doubled and tripled. And once you've got that large audience, it's who are bombing you with love and telling you that you are the brightest spark on the planet for pointing out all these things that just happen to fit their preconceived ideas. It's incredibly difficult to go, no, I don't want that, because of two things. One, sometimes it's a financial loss, and sometimes it's just basically that, I was dead popular yesterday, now nobody's interested. And two, and this is the most vital thing, and this is what a lot of people who were dabbling with the alternative media over the past few years are finding, they will turn on you. They will become rabid and they will chew you up and spit you out the second that they are not useful to you. In fact, it's worse. We get this a lot because basically, hang on, but you were supposed to be supporting this concept inside my head and now you've told me that it's a lie. Well, yeah, we found something out. Okay, this is what you do. You find new information, you process that and you change and alter your view along with it. They don't want that. They don't want that at all. They see you as having betrayed them for telling them the truth, because it knackers up that one narrative. And that narrative was basically supporting something. It was doing something in their life that basically made everything make more sense to them. And again, that's not to say that all conspiracies don't exist. It's not to say that for Christ's sake, we've discussed a really, really disturbing one right at the beginning of the show where hundreds of thousands of people died, a real one. Okay, so we're not saying that. But what we are saying is that basically in this convenience culture and this culture of mass information and mass disinformation, it is very easy to fool yourself into, let's use an analogy of weightlifting or something like that. Okay, what's important with weightlifting is form. You've got to keep your form right, otherwise basically other muscles are coming in to basically help you out. But your body will do that because we want the easiest stuff. We want the easy things. So if you're doing, say, I don't know, an upwards lift or something like that, you'll lean forward so that your back's helping your shoulders and stuff like that. It's the same thing. These are psychological comforts. And if you all of a sudden go, no, put your back right up against that so that it's just through your shoulders, oh, hang on, I can't lift nearly as much. Well, hang on, if you take away that narrative structure that underpins the way I see my life, all of a sudden I've got loads of questions. And I don't want that. I don't want questions. This is the irony about the question everything, is they don't want questions. They want answers. And they don't really even want answers. They want you to tell them that they were right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you're dead right, David. It's been weaponized. It's been weaponized for a long, long time. And people seem to miss it. There's this obvious sort of salesman's patter about a lot of stuff. And for whatever reason, people are just eager to go for it for some reason. I suppose people just want to believe something.
But I think we were saying about it becoming more and more mainstream. I think the pandemic and the recession and everything, climate change, there's so many kind of existential threats to people's lives that they need more than ever, they need certainty, and they're just not getting it. And that is why I think, or at least partly why, as well as kind of lack of kind of education and media literacy and the downfall of trust in the media. That's also feeding into it. But I think more so it's the fact that people don't or are just on edge because of like pandemic is a perfect example. That's why so many people embraced conspiracy theories during that period, is because that was an answer to something that didn't really have an answer at the time in terms of where it came from, how it's spreading, how is it going to, who's at fault. So I think that, yeah, it's 100%. It's the easy way out because it gives you some sort of certainty.
Yeah, totally. Just going on from sort of like the real world effects of this and tying in with the COVID and stuff, can you tell us a bit about Danny Lemoy?
Yeah, Danny. So Danny Lemoy is a machinery operator from Rhode Island who a decade ago, or just over a decade ago, got Lyme disease and was initially diagnosed and was going through medical treatment. And it's kind of unclear how initially he became aware of ivermectin as a potential treatment, but he did. And he decided that ivermectin, not the human formulation, but the animal formulation of ivermectin, was what is going to cure Lyme disease. And I suppose because Lyme disease is caused by a tick,
It's technically a parasite, isn't it? So it's like you could see his logic.
I don't want to give any credibility to his claim that you can cure Lyme disease with ivermectin, but
No, of course not.
ivermectin is a horse dewormer, so it takes out it gets rid of parasites in horses, and so it he decided that this was he just his nurse came one day to him and she said, "Oh, you're looking great," and he goes, "Yeah, I've stopped taking all the medicine that you've been giving me, and I'm just on ivermectin. It's great." And so he continued to do that for over the last decade. Every day he was taking ivermectin to treat Lyme disease. And then when COVID hit, ivermectin suddenly became this kind of cure du jour for people in the anti-vaxxer community. And he decided that now was time for him to leverage his experience in taking ivermectin on a daily basis. And so he started a Telegram channel called Dirt Road Discussions, which had huge numbers of followers, tens of thousands of followers. And he basically there told people how to go about taking ivermectin every day in order to cure initially COVID-19, but subsequently pretty much every single disease under the sun, from cancer to autism to depression to you name it, he's probably prescribed ivermectin. So along with ivermectin, you had to drink like lemon water, and there was he had his own homemade version of hydroxychloroquine, and also apricot seeds, which is something if you eat enough of them, they turn into cyanide in your body, the chemical in them. And if you have enough, you get cyanide poisoning. So that was his thing. And then he died. He died last month. And the admins on his channel, his family in the online obituary didn't mention how he died, but they just said he died suddenly. And then the admins on his channel kind of gave more details, and they said his heart had swollen to twice the size. So it's unclear exactly how he died, but the channel he operated continues. I was only checking it yesterday. They're just continuing to push this idea that ivermectin is a cure for everything. And in the channel, if you read through the comments, there are people who are suffering really, really bad side effects from taking it. Nausea, headaches, pains in their chest, vomiting, like just a huge, huge array of problems. And it's explained away because Danny Lemoy had come up with this idea that this is called herxing, which is his term for how, which is actually a real medical term, but not in this how he describes it, but it was his term for the pain you have to go through when parasites are leaving your body. And so, like when people were getting headaches, he said, well, that's just the parasites leaving your brain, because he was curing autism. So there'd be people giving their kids ivermectin because they had autism. And like there was actually a dedicated channel to set up for people who wanted help with their kids who are suffering from autism or Down syndrome or other behavioral diseases like that, or conditions, sorry. And it was terrifying because there was tens of thousands of people who were following this protocol. The fact that he died suddenly at the age of 50 from an enlarged heart didn't seem to have any impact on their willingness to follow or believe what he was saying. And effectively, it's this online community that are dosing themselves or treating themselves based on evidence or testimony or experience from one guy who was a machine operator in Rhode Island and who had zero medical training, but they're willing to put their health, their lives, and their kids' lives in his hands. And even though he's now dead, they're still willing to do it.
Just to explain as well, like the swollen heart could have been a side effect of taking huge amounts of ivermectin.
It is a known side effect of taking too much ivermectin, yeah. But I there's no way of knowing that's what caused it. But
no, sure,
yeah.
We had a guide. We didn't have a guide. Like Jay Widener, actually. Like we've talked about this before, like on our show. He's the guy that came up with the idea that Kubrick faked the moon landings, which we thoroughly debunked on our show, which everyone should listen to. He was taking ivermectin as a preventative for COVID. But he couldn't get it prescribed to him, obviously. So he had to get it from vets, and he'd worked out the dosage that he was supposed to be taking. He was actually selling this on to people via Facebook. Anyway, he'd been taking it for about 2 weeks, he said, daily, which probably you shouldn't do. And then he wrote on Facebook that had spent a couple of days basically expelling what he described as gallons and gallons of black oil from, whilst on the toilet. And I know a lot of us would say, well, that sounds like your stool's full of blood, mate. Like almost as if you're destroying your stomach lining with loads and loads of, horse wormer. But no, it wasn't that. Jay figured it out, right? It turned out that it was really beneficial. He figured out that archons, those fictional things that don't exist, archons, these sort of alien overlords that, like, I don't know, whatever, there's something to do with the reptiles. It's never been actually absolutely clear. But anyway, Jay has figured out that they live as parasites in your stomach. So it was perfectly all right that he was shitting blood because ultimately he's expelling archons from his body. How it went for him, I don't know. But he's still alive, though.
But actually, that's interesting because I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a vet. And I was telling him about this, and he's a vet here in Ireland. He goes, but you can't get, like, how do they get ivermectin? Because you can only get it through vets here. But in the US, you can buy it off the shelf, apparently. So they were doing a poll the other day, and it was like they'd named 8 versions, and they were like doing, which is your favorite? And like thousands of people were voting in this poll. And I'm not sure what they were basing it on. And my vet friend said, oh, well, it's probably taste. Yeah, it probably is, because there are, like, it's, what else are you going to, like, anyway, it's incredible how it's taken on this kind of place within that kind of conspiracy community that this drug will solve everything effectively.
It's not dissimilar to, did you ever hear about this sort of miracle mineral solution and stuff like that? Yeah, so which is essentially bleach. Getting people to there's a whole gamut of, like, health products that will actually kill you. That black salve is terrible for you. Like, it eats through your skin, doesn't it, and stuff like that.
It's all these things are because they're just not regulated and not prescribed by doctors. Well, not doctors you'd want to be prescribing something to you. It's incredibly dangerous, and like, no matter how many times people die as a result of using these things, or injure themselves, or hurt their kids, or whatever, people, it goes back to that thing where people are just ignore it because they have an answer now. Ivermectin is the answer, and anything that deviates from that narrative, they just block out.
I was given one actually like years ago. Like, luckily I threw it out. Sorry, I'll explain what I'm talking about. Recently, it explained that there's like these medallions that are given out that are sort of like, they're supposed to sort of reorganize your chakras or crystallize your thingies or kundalini, your what's it or whatever, right? They're basically like little black like discs with like patterns on them that are on strings, and they're sold as like necklaces. Someone gave me one of these like years and years and years and years ago, like, and I threw it away because I'm not going to wear that crap. Anyway, the very recently it was on the news or something. It was in the newspapers. I was like, I recognise those. I used to have one of those. What was it? So I looked at the article, and apparently they're desperately carcinogenic. They've got they've been treated in some way that they're almost like radioactive. Like, to the point, yeah. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I had that in my house. Like, so luckily I got rid of it years and years ago. But yeah, it is bizarre. The best one, the one that always makes me laugh, is the people that are up in arms, like, oh, they won't treat me. They won't let me into the hospital. Why? Well, I refuse to wear a mask, or I refuse to get this untested vaccine. I refuse to have this vaccine. It's like, oh, right, that's terrible. What is it that you're going in for? Well, I need a heart transplant. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, you're willing to like be put under anesthetic, have somebody break open your chest, pull your ribs apart, go inside your body, take your heart out, and put another person's heart in there instead of it, and you trust them to do that, but you don't trust them with their vaccine protocol.
It's something that I come across quite a lot, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. It's like when I write about these, like during the pandemic, like there was a lot of anti-vaxxers in the anti-vaxxer community, high profile people who died as a result of COVID or not taking the vaccine. And when you write about that and you post it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, mostly Twitter, the reaction is like overwhelmingly like people rejoicing in it, saying, "Oh, it's just a Darwin Award. It's, they deserve to die." And it's because every time it happens, and it happened again with the Danny Lemoy story recently, people were just kind of celebrating it. They were kind of gleeful about it, and it's really disturbing, or I find it disturbing at least. That's where we've got to. That's the point we've got to know, where we're happy when like these people, and like fair enough, Daniel Moy wasn't just a follower. He was a person pushing this stuff, but we don't know how he died, and he still died, and he still was, I guess he believed he was doing the right thing, whatever. But like, I don't think it benefits anyone to kind of celebrate these deaths.
I think it's born out of frustration.
Yeah, it absolutely is, I think. But I'd like to get your thoughts on whether you think how people view conspiracy theorists and how they view that community, and how people seem to be willing to celebrate death or injury or something in that community when they wouldn't necessarily otherwise.
I think it depends entirely on what it is that they've done, and I think it's mostly the irony of the situation, not necessarily celebrating the person's death, but basically like you were advising people that this thing wasn't real to the detriment of a huge amount of people. Whether you thought you were doing the right thing or the wrong thing or whatever, you were basically causing harm to people with your advice, and it's bit you in the arse. And so there's a certain amount of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Schadenfreude, essentially. Plus, you're absolutely right, actually. It is a person. That gets lost in the internet. That does get lost. Yeah. And it's just see, you were stupid. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, actually. Like, that is a fair point. Somebody did die.
It's very easy to do that on the internet and say, "Oh, look, you're such an idiot. You're dead now. Haha."
Yeah.
And it dehumanizes us. And it's because I think, like, well, I completely understand this. I completely understand why people do that, especially people who, may have been dealing with something like that in their own family and have been like it's been, they've had like maybe years of having to battle someone who's an anti-vaxxer, and that's horrible. It's difficult. But for me, it kind of speaks more about how, as a society, we've kind of become we're kind of on all sides. We're losing kind of a bit of our empathy or ability to empathize with people, and our first reaction is to kind of point and laugh rather than kind of just stop and think about how, yeah, okay, this guy did lead this thing, but like he's also part of this community that has been allowed to grow and fester in our world, and that's not great.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing that I'm trying to show normal people, like what a conspiracist is.
Yeah.
Who am I? What kind of person am I? Like, the people that you're making fun of is me. Seeing what happened in 2020 with the pandemic, what happened with January 6th, I started to see like actual real world harms of conspiracies, as in people were actually dying because they believed this stuff. They believed in the things that I believed, and if I still believed in those things, would I be dead? That's a question I have to ask myself.
Yeah.
Like, would I have caught and spread COVID to more vulnerable people because I wasn't taking it seriously as a conspiracist? Would I have got caught up in more QAnon stuff if I was in America? Would I have been at January 6th?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, with Ashley Babbitt dying, it made me think, well, what if that was my partner? We believed in those very same things, like satanic elite pedophiles. But still, like, I really empathize and relate to having that mindset and wanting to fix the world. And then it ends up being harmful, and you could actually hurt yourself and others around you. It's really strange. And like, you see all this hate that Ashley Babbitt got, and I just wasn't happy with that. She shouldn't have been there, but she didn't deserve to die. Which is why I speak out. Believing the extreme conspiracies that I believed in can be dangerous. And obviously, on the flip side, with social media, Twitter can be a bit feisty. And deconstructing conspiracy theories and debunking disinformation attracts its fair share of hate and abuse. So, there's only so many times you can be called a prick or get your 17th booster. If you don't die of myocarditis, you're going to hang at Nuremberg 2.0 before you kind of like bite back. But yeah, I don't agree with gleefully ripping the dead.
Yeah, I think the Ashley Babbitt thing is it's a good example, because it went both ways with her. She was kind of lionized within the far right community as this hero who gave her life for Trump. So she was being kind of utilized by them and exploited by them for their ends. And then on the left, she was kind of derided as this figure of ridicule who deserved to die. She was trying to climb in through a window. And like, I think it's just symptomatic of the kind of polarized nature, especially in the US and increasingly over here too, where the only reaction is an extreme reaction. It has to be, she's either a terrorist or she's a hero. She can't be just someone who got caught up in this thing and got dragged along to January 6th. And, maybe she could have easily gone in a different door and would never have died. But she's a hero or she's a terrorist. It's one or the other. It's not this. And it's never that simple. It's way more nuanced. It's always more nuanced. But there's no time for that. There's no time for people to talk about this, because Tucker Carlson has already made up his mind and he's telling his tens of millions of viewers on Fox News, and that's it. Or, the liberal media are talking about her, and, people on Twitter are joking about her and sharing memes about her. And I think it's just depressing, because that's kind of where we've become, and that's how we're dealing with the current situation and the growth in kind of conspiratorial or extremist thinking, and it's not going to end well.
Well, I guess now we're extremely depressed. Let's have a good question. I like to ask people who are professionals, actually employed in this field, because there's a lot of us out here that are, we're not professionals in any way. We don't get paid. There's loads of people that are on Twitter all day fighting disinformation, just one-on-one with conspiracists and spreaders of disinformation. And it gets heavy for a lot of us in the community having to deal with that constantly. So what do you do to escape so you can come back refreshed and actually do a good job?
I play football for an hour every Friday, and it's the best hour of my week. Well, I can't say that because if my wife and kids listen to this, but, but honestly, it's because I do not think about. I obviously don't have my phone or I don't have a smartwatch. I just have nothing, and I just play football, and I love it. It can just is something I look forward to all week, and it just for that hour, it just releases anything, and you kind of come away from it, and you're kind of a bit more because it's on a Friday evening, so it's after a week of work maybe, and it's kind of fine. Like obviously, I've got 3 kids, and they are kind of a natural decompressant because they don't care about Ashley Babbitt or Danny Lemoy or what Jim fucking Watkins is doing on 8chan. They want dinner, or they want me to play with them, or they want me to dress up, or so that's good. But like I know myself that and my wife will say it like that. She'll know if I've had a bad day or whatever because my mood. I'll be short or I'll be snappy with the kids and I'll be shouting at them, and it's just not good. So it does affect you. But yeah, I try to play sport or go to the gym or play with my kids. That's kind of it. I don't have any like special technique for trying to get this stuff out of my head because I did take a week off last week and I turned off all notifications on my phone. I didn't look at Twitter. I didn't look at my emails, and it was amazing. It was really, really good. And I know for a lot of people that's difficult to do just for their jobs and whatever, but like it really helped. Although I think maybe it then gave rise to kind of this sense of dread the day before I was going back to work because I knew I'd have to face everything. It was all just waiting. It was all just waiting for me there. They hadn't gone anywhere. So yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah. So like, it's the base thing is trying to not look at your phone for once you leave work to try and have dinner or play with your kids without constantly worrying about something pinging on your phone or something like that. So, but it's hard because I think I can be doing that and not consciously be thinking about the kind of stuff that I've been dealing with or the people I've been talking to or the stories I've been hearing, but subconsciously it's still there. And it does impact you, I think, and it does it can weigh on you. And I don't know. I was reading a report this week about it was about researchers and the impact that being in these spaces consistently has on them, and how that there's no resources whatsoever in most institutions to deal with that. And it was just interesting to read that to kind of say that I think there's a finite amount of time when you can be in these spaces without it kind of really damaging you. Just, not that you're going to start believing you're falling into these groups or anything like that, but more just from a mental health point of view that it's a drain.
Just a lot of negativity and just like, totally.
But play football. That's my best tip for.
So immerse yourself in something that takes your attention away.
Exactly. Do something for an hour that just you cannot put any focus on besides what you're actually doing.
Unfortunately, we do this podcast to wind down, so it doesn't really work out.
Because like even when I go to the gym, I end up listening to like podcasts about conspiracy theories, and it's just like, I don't know why I do it, but I do, and it's just, all right, okay.
That's brilliant. I was going to ask you one more question, but if I'm honest, I think that's probably a better way to end it. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, David. I want to recommend everyone goes and reads David's stuff. It's in Vice. It's really good. It's really, really good. Like he's got a real sort of, he really drills into the issues and talks about the human aspect of it. Brilliantly written, talks about all the interesting issues that you're going to be interested in. He's talking about the far right. He's talking about QAnon and COVID denial and disinformation, and fantastic stuff. Everyone should definitely check him out.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Some dare call it conspiracy.